Richard, welcome back as always.
Thank you.
So, how's it going? How's the preparation, Durand Cup, and then second division? You already had a great start to the season or end to last year, however you want to look at it, with the BDFA Super Division title. So, how is everything going?
Now going okay. Firstly, after the BDFA league, we had a big squad churn. We had to see a lot of players leave and a lot of new faces come in. And big aspect of what happened in the BDFA was we identified a few gaps where we had to address. So it gave us a big opportunity over the course of the season to see where exactly we lacked. And there was a break in April as well, and they announced the other lockdown. So during that time, we had to make some tough decisions in terms of not seeing certain players continue with us and also pursuing certain targets. And considering Durand has just come up with sort of brought in a new sort of energy to the whole preseason. Because today we complete 8 weeks, so that's 2 months that are done preparing towards this qualifying bid. So Durand Cup has come in at the right time for us to once again see where exactly we stand. And also, I think many of the players have played the Durand Cup in the past. They've had some amount of success with it. So, this coming in at the last moment was really good news. We were pursuing it also. We were doing our best to sort of see what we could do to get included. So, we really welcome the whole inclusion of the Durand.
So, you signed two foreigners this time, both strikers, Pedro Mansi and Lucien Marian. Is that how you pronounce the name? Majan.
Luka Mason.
Luka Mason, yes. Because I never listened to ID commentary. So, okay, listen, Luka Mason, yes. So, last time you went without a striker, and this time you have gone with two. Because last time I said this to you and I said this to everyone. You look like the best coach team last time. It just was that the finishing was not there. So, what is the thought process in getting two strikers? And considering there's only two foreigners allowed, I am assuming you will start with both of them as well.
Yeah, both are definitely to start as long as they're available. Just keeping in mind injuries, suspensions, and any illnesses and things. So as long as they're available, they are sure to start. And also, last year the transfer window was a very complicated one. We could only pick the players who were already in India. We couldn't really import anybody from overseas because of the whole visa and other aspects of it that were happening. So that dynamic was a little bit of a challenge to manage, and we managed to get the players that we did. I think Robert and Opoku worked with the plan and gave us what we wanted. But I think, like you rightly identified, the scoring touch and other aspects were lacking. We created a lot of chances, and all those stats that make a team look good and what it may be. But and the other aspect also is that we had seen with what happens when you have just the lone foreigner up front. He attracts a lot of the defensive attention, and having two up front, it changes the dynamic a bit. It helps us. Put on a lot more pressure into the final third. It gives a lot more surety as well. So that's what we're aiming for. And plus, both of them have come off really strong seasons, really high goal returns, and both in terms of assists as well as scoring them. Pedro Manzi's record speaks for himself, and even Luka did really well for Churchill, kept them relevant in the title chase. So we've got two really strong personalities, and fact that they were available, we had to pursue them. It's sort of giving us a lot of confidence to build the season around them, as well as some really, really talented Indian players.
Yeah, and there is also this thing, right? When you look at the team, most of them are so used to playing against one striker, and you have the chance now to play two. I don't know if you're going to play up two. I don't have to say all that, two up, one behind, whatever it may be. They're generally not used to playing against two strikers, especially two foreign strikers. Is that going to be something that is probably in your favor, or just the fact that you will have to sit with the Indian midfield and backline sort of, you know, negate that or
It's
cancel that
difficult to
out?
say because even Bhawanipur last season they had signed two strikers. That was Philip Adja and Kroma. Kroma tested positive, so he couldn't feature. So we really didn't see that play out in last season's qualifiers. That is somebody who played with two foreigners up front. So the dynamic really wasn't seen. I think maybe it would have changed the fortunes as well had both of them been available. So Not being used to do so, I'm sure teams. I mean, one thing is your whatever tactics you have when you asked playing parallel or off each other or one front, one behind. Your tactics remain a secret for just the first 90 minutes that you play. After that, you're exposed, right? People have watched you, then they try and figure you out, and it's just that we have to be successful with what we're trying to do and just control all the processes and work hard towards getting the outcomes that we want. So it's just about imposing ourselves with how exactly we want to play.
So asking you generally about coaching, right? Coaching, especially at the time of COVID, and there are so many uncertainties, and there is always the fact that someone might test positive, and you're always concerned about all these things, and there is constant changing in the narrative and the information that we are getting, new variants, old variants. This is the problem, that is a problem. So, how do you deal with all this on one side and focus on coaching on the other?
One is the squad composition. We've tried our best to get pairings everywhere. That is, I think any squad is built around those ideals, right? One is you get one person who's an out and out expert, like one trick pony who does his one job really, really well. To back it up, we get the players who are a bit more versatile, can play central of the pitch, can play in wide areas, guys who can play centrally in midfield and then wide and on the wings. I mean, same person, different attributes. Uh, I mean, I think most of the coaches around the world have accepted that. I mean, this whole COVID situation is not under control. No matter how hard we try to sort of, I mean, what sort of narratives we build around it, the new variants and things like that. I guess that's not under control. We have to deal with it as it comes up. So, but I mean, if at all we are planning week by week, it's always back of our head that okay, if this person tests positive, then maybe we have to look at these options, and we've learned a bit of a lesson from last season as well, where a couple of our players tested positive, and two of the roommates had to be quarantined as well. So we've sort of addressed those aspects. But once again, I mean, the vaccines are in. I think most of the squad is double vaccinated. Uh, with the testing, but we haven't had any issues, no
Yeah.
positives. So at least with the vaccination coming in, regular testing, it gives us a lot of surety in terms of where exactly the squad stands. As far as the illness goes, over and above that, obviously, the bigger challenges are unforeseen injuries and things like suspensions and stuff that come in. But that's part of the job. I think
Yeah.
eventually players watch it as well, and then they are prepared to sort of step in when we need them to. And that aspect of managing players in terms of just be ready, we will need you and things. So that's been a constant dynamic in how we are managing the squad.
So you mentioned something about learning from your last time that you played the second I-League qualifier, as it's called. So, what can you elaborate on some of the other learnings apart from these things that you already mentioned, like on the field? Because for you also it was a big challenge, right? It's a big step up in competition. So,
See, like overall, I mean, one aspect I think we spoke about it last time as well. This anything to qualify and progress comes at the end of a season, right? That is, you get promoted or relegated at the end of 20 matches. You get promoted. I mean, you get into playoffs after playing out a whole season. Your finals at the end of it. But last year as well as this year, our season openers are a high consequence
yeah,
platform.
events.
So, I mean, we're fighting for promotion and stuff right from the word go. So, it gets a little bit, I mean, difficult to manage this whole, not difficult, but again, we can't really reflect too much on what's been happening earlier. So, yeah, I guess it's, if you're asking what exactly we are looking to build on or what the lessons were, number one, the squad composition, we had to bring in a lot more experience. We had a really a young squad over there, and again, we brought in players of with a lot more playing minutes at the higher level. That is the ISL and I League guys who've seen that, guys who've had a lot more championship winning experience, know what it's like to be around winning dressing rooms, and that's what we've prioritized a lot more. Even when you look at the squad that played the BDFA League, we've looked to upgrade on just the characters that are there in the team.
So, any Indian names? I don't know. Your squad has not been announced as such, but anyone everyone, the listeners or readers would have heard.
I, I think let it come from. I think the foreigners is what they're starting off with in terms of announcing the squad and things. And Indian, we let the team media team take the lead in terms of announcing it. Then
Yeah,
we can talk about it next time we speak.
perfect. So, can I ask you about that goal? that high consequences volley that was scored in the Super Division last minute.
Which one?
There was a last minute volley, right? That happened in the Super Division.
Yeah.
So what was the emotions there? Because this Super Division was great. Like I was there towards the last, I mean, the earlier part I wasn't there, but attended all the games in the last maybe 1 week or 10 days or whatever. And all of these games are really high consequences, and you had conceded the goal, and then to go and score at the other end with that. That was a goal. That was one of the best goals I've seen in live at the stadium. So, what was the emotions after that? And then you can also talk about the other goal which came when you actually won the title, the header that happened. So, what were the emotions going on at this time? Because these are moments that defined your season.
No, one is the game before that was a loss, right? And we started off
Mm.
the season wanting to win the local title. And BDFA League, what happens is it's all okay till the top two meet, right? Because everybody comes in there with a high win percentage. That is, it depends on number two, one, two, and three losing to each other. That decides the table. I mean, what happens between the top three rather than what happens at the bottom. So, dropping points against Kickstart left. I mean, it wasn't a good feeling, and then we had BFC coming up right after that. So. Um, it's hard to, I mean, like at that moment, you're not really registering, you're just still locked into the game. There was still 5 more minutes to play after that goal went in because there was added time and stuff. But yeah, at the end of it, we knew we were 3 points away from securing the title. I mean, it's just that it gave us a lot of assurance. We're talking about defining the season and things, at least um, you can't plan for these things. It was from a free kick. Robert chested the ball down, Ronaldo converted it. So this is nothing that's come off the training ground or anything like that. It's just emergency football, right? We had all the bodies up there, chucked the ball in, and within 2 touches, we found the back of the net. So in terms of gratification, it's just that the boys showcased improvisation. They showcased a lot of desire and wit. It was nice to see the entire bench coming off, all the staff and things, including physio and whoever was in and around that whole environment, just going all in and celebrating. So those are things that you really register. I mean, that's one aspect that we're really careful of the environment and but we get very protective about it, and we like to have buy-in. At least in the good times, we like to see everybody be a part of it and celebrate it together. So that was a big part of it. And talking about the other goal against Deccan, we knew these guys would put up a tough fight with 10 people behind the ball. We would really have to sort of work for it. And then again, rebound from a corner, crossed it in. Robert was up there to do the job for us again. So, I mean, uh, and like I said, despite the whole BDF success, there has been a major squad churn where one is that we did learn a lesson that difference between BDFA league level and second division is not as tight as what we would see the difference between the CFL and I League second division, just in terms of quality of oppositions and intensity of the match day and things. So, but yeah, we did get a lot of belief from that. I mean, it always helps to win things. It always helps, and if you are contending for titles, whatever it may be, I mean, at that moment, that was the most important tournament we were engaged in. There's nothing else going on in our lives professionally, and that was all that we were playing for. And it's good to walk away with it and get the title and stuff. And the way we did it, also just going down to the last game and things, it adds a lot more layers to how, I mean, what sort of value we place on it.
So I guess you know that your team can handle pressure. So that's probably one learning from that.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, it again comes down to we always reflect on the process. Where exactly did we break down, and where do we need to pick off? What were the bright points? And then again, this whole improvisation bit is something that we really tend to acknowledge a lot because there's only so much that we can do from the training ground till what happens on match day. So we can plan, let's say, 80% of it, out of which only 50% will happen, and then the remaining 10-20% is. Uh, what the players bring to the table, right? I mean, just these bits that everything clicks, they are in sync and things. So those are sort of bits that we really value.
So can we talk before that we spoke a little more about I-League qualifiers and Durand Cup? Now, coming back to the immediate challenge at hand, how do you see that tournament? Because I know, and you have also made me into this cultural enthusiast about culture obsessed with sport and all these things. So Durand Cup, 130 odd year history. Going into that for the first time, playing ISL teams are there, I-League teams are there, yourself in Delhi also. So how do you look at it, like as a challenge, as the prestige of the tournament, and as preparation, all these things?
One is the whole season has been built on just the fact that we fight for everything. That
Hmm.
any 90 minutes ahead of us, any set of 3 points, we have to go after it. So whether it's Durand or even the friendly match that we played today, the approach to it is that we chase it down 100%. We chase the game constantly. So the Durand speaks for itself. I think even the foreigners have heard about it. Last year it didn't get held, but it always it's something that creates a bit of a buzz and things. When we announced to the squad, it was about a couple of weeks back when we had just finished the inter squad game, and there were murmurs that we might get included, but just the official announcement coming in, you could actually see that people were
Hmm.
totally locked in. And also, one is to manage a really long preseason because, like I mentioned, we've been in for 8 weeks now. That is 2 months with no official games, and to take forward the exposure at Durand Cup level to see where exactly we stand and really sort of again put those whole mental facets and preparation to test because we want to go as far as we can. I mean, at the end of the day, every effort is going to go towards see how far we can go into the Durand because that again will sort of feed into the qualifying campaign as well.
Yeah.
A successful Durand, God knows how people measure it. Even we don't have a parameter in terms of if we
Hmm.
get this far, then it's a tremendous success and things because we don't want to sort of write off anything or get ahead of ourselves. It's just that it's coming now. We're prepared, and like you've mentioned, like the whole culture around it, and but you go on to the Wikipedia pages, you see 130 years of Durand history, how many people have won it, then you get the cumulative bits, right? Like guys who won the
Yeah.
titles more than anybody else. So, I mean, those numbers have a lot of history behind them. There's a lot of stories behind them. What happened during the world wars and stuff? It was suspended, and
Hmm.
evolution of the tournament from foreign teams being invited to not becoming what it is to what it will happen post-pandemic. And it's very clear that if we is the tournament itself respects good organizations to come in and add some competitive muscle to it. So on all fronts, it's a. I mean, like I said, like with the BDFA, this will be the most important platform that we engaged in. I mean, there won't be anything else going on competitively for us. There's no bit that if we do well here, we get Champions League entry, blah blah blah. The Durand is a Durand, so we will be totally focused on that.
So you will be playing Kerala Blasters, Delhi, and the Navy team. So with the group, right? That's your group.
No, that's not a group. Our group is CRPF, Air Force, and these guys,
Oh, sorry, that is the
Mohammedan Sport
Bengaluru
and
FC group. Sorry, sorry. That's
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'll edit this part out. I don't want to, you know. But yeah, so how do you so how do you see that the challenge? At least that three matches are so confirmed because you've been doing 8 weeks. It is about time that you probably would like any norm like elsewhere if they start preseason. 8 weeks is what they look like to start the season.
Yeah,
So it was about time that you wanted to start competitive games. I mean, you can play friendlies, but competitive games is something different.
yeah,
So it
totally
came at the
different.
right time for you as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and plus, I mean, it's a good. I mean, it's a really strong group because we have the Delhi champions, we have the Punjab champions, and a team that made it to the playoff stages in the I League.
Hmm.
Mohammedan has been very active in the transfer window, so
Yeah.
the game on the 14th is something that everybody is looking forward to. But we have to overcome the obstacles that CRPF and Air Force will post on us, and they've disturbed teams like Delhi FC and Garhwal in the
Hmm.
Delhi League, which was grueling. I mean, they were playing a game every other day in peak
Hmm.
heat, and there was rain, it was a slushy ground, and whatnot. So, at least in terms of character and intensity, we know that the Air Force team won't lack in any of those. And plus, CRPF team as well. I mean, we've seen a few games of theirs, so now we need to figure out what best we will do to beat them. And get the first 6 points and take it game by game after that. So yeah, it would be fantastic to top the group. That's the aim, and then see what happens uh, once that aim is fulfilled.
Yeah. So now, moving slightly away from football, we are both into this conspiracy thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So have you been following that podcasting? I mean, I know you turned me on to the MK Ultras, and then
Yeah.
I went into such a bender. I went into so many books, so many podcasts, audio books, and things like that. My wife thought I was going to end up being a murderer because I was just
Mm.
constantly listening to these things and consuming all these. That's just generally how I am. Like if I'm into something, I really go full in, and then suddenly I'll
Rabbit,
go out. So
rabbit hole, yeah.
yeah, that whole rabbit hole thing is very real. And so, what is your favorite conspiracy theory? Is there something I can look for?
Just related to sports, I think I told you to get hold of that book, right? Men on Magic Carpets by Ed
I
Hawkins.
read it.
Huh? You finished it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, that was by far the most fascinating read, just in terms of understanding. I mean, it goes across various sports and things, but
Hmm.
it's a bit. I mean, it triggers a little bit of curiosity, and then if you want to like go down a completely mild sort of segue and stuff, then it goes into mindfulness and all the other bits associated with the
Hmm.
mind and sport and things. So
Hmm.
yeah, so I mean, yeah, but that's what I've been looking a lot at. Guys like Pete Carroll picking up
Hmm.
on that, then Phil Jackson, coaches who are big on the whole mental side of things, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's been quite insightful just in terms of how we are scripting our approach and stuff, and bits like that. But yeah, I mean, this whole MK Ultra stuff, that's a totally different level. But seeing
Yeah.
yeah, how it applies to the sporting world and stuff, quite fascinating.
So I've been actually doing a course on sports and society, and
Okay.
more than halfway through it now. I think eventually that will be my thing. Leave journalism and go in that direction. That's my plan. Like to culture and all these education things.
That'll be good if you can
It's
convince some government to sort of buy into sporting culture, then the results will come
yeah.
rather than
Seriously, I
just
was just
building a.
it's insane like the things that they teach and how society reacts and through from the Victorian era and now to now the dramatic changes that has gone through in multiple countries and how culturally sport is adopted by certain countries that sort of transforms into their own like football with let's say football with Brazil, how the Brazil approaches it and Europeans approach it or Asians Japan approaches it from in an Indian standpoint.
Very
Do you
different.
see any
Yeah.
differences in culture? Like I was doing some reading into this also. How Kerala observes football or sort of imbibes with the culture of football. Goa and Northeast, whole other thing. Goa, Kolkata again, a whole other thing. Punjab as well, but I don't know what the football culture is there. Generally, is there anything that you can shed some light on? Like how India is so massive, right? We can't have one style of football. That's just a myth. Like even
Yeah.
Spain doesn't play tiki taka. So, do you have any insights into that?
It's been a while since I've sort of broken it all down. But yeah, I mean, states that have a very obvious bias towards the game and prioritize it, and but you see that scattered across the country. One is the Northeast. Again, the Northeast is not exactly
Yeah,
one region, as a lot of people think. It's
yeah.
8 different states that have their own sub identities, subcultures, and even within the states, again, if you break down Manipur, you speak to the guys there, they'll
Mm,
tell you guys from Ukrul have this thing about showboating, and guys from the plains
mm,
and all of that, they explain it quite well. Then again, difference between Goans, you ask them, they say you can just tell a player from South Goa when you watch him play. I mean,
mm.
those, but then I'm sure Kerala haven't interacted so much over there, but I'm sure you guys also have your whole bit about a player from the hills or players from Mallapuram or players from
Mm.
more of the city side and bits like that. I mean, it's quite easy to identify, and even Bangalore has its really strong football culture right from
Yeah,
the towns and stuff like that. I mean, the fact is you can't replicate it. I mean, minute you um, it's all come up organically, right? I mean, just Bangalore's football culture, there's a very strong organic build to it, as well as what's happened in Kerala and stuff. We really need to get down to the history, how the what sort of successes brought them towards the game. Why isn't cricket as popular? How come they haven't caught on to that whole sort of bait that cricket sort of brings across? What is it that attracts them? And I think this whole Copa America bit as well, right? Recently, I mean, Argentina fans,
Yeah.
I mean, our neighbors, Bangladesh fans, and then you saw people in streets of Calcutta, many parts of Kerala, and things celebrating it as dramatically as guys in Argentina itself. I mean, you had cars and people had painted their houses and all
Yeah.
sorts just to celebrate Messi's first international title. I didn't lag far behind, but it's just that so many things linked to it. And when you spoke about style of play and things, exactly that. I mean, we have parts of Bangalore that identify themselves as the Brazil of Bangalore, and then you have a different approach to things in different parts of the city. There's a Pele statue right here in Gothampur, right?
Gautam, yeah.
And plus, I think big parts of Kerala and Goa identifying themselves with the Portuguese style, whatever it may be. Because again, when you go down there and break it down, even people there, I mean, people in those countries itself can't really tell you what exactly their football aesthetics or ideals are. So, but yeah, I mean, to keep culture alive also is a massive effort, and I think these states have done it better because we hear so many of these stories about Chennai having a really good football culture at one point in time. The Chennai League being the third oldest domestic league in Asia or the world, something along those lines. But somehow that hasn't sustained because the people who carried those stories, carried the legacy, started going away. They didn't pass them on. Then the competition started to dry up. And then you speak to people in the Bombay football scene, you get similar stories. And then the surprising bits are places like Kolhapur, you go to Belgaum, you go to smaller towns in Mizoram and Manipur and stuff. There you suddenly see, or even Bengal for that matter, for games that are totally unheard of, you have thousands and thousands of people coming there and watching and cheering them on. So something over there is going right. It might not be productive in terms of your sporting output. It's not producing your world stars. It's not really contributing so much to the national team. But at least in terms of people coming out there, giving 2 hours of the day in the stands just to watch a bunch of guys fight it out. That's culture then. I mean, it becomes a part of you, right? Whether you because very difficult to explain the fanfare that happens in the lower divisions in England, where again you have 35, 40,000 people show up in championship and League One, League Two, and thing. But that's culture, right? You can't help it. Which team you support, which team you're brought into and stuff. It's a lot like religion. It's a lot like norms and what's it called rules that this is the team that you follow. You go to a certain school, you end up, or the friends that you hang out with dictate the team that you end up following. So you need to be part of it. Culture is something that sort of sucks you in, and then you sort of get completely absorbed by it, and then you become a part of it. I mean, without realizing it, it's very much a part of it. And then you pass on your ideals, right? Then it
Yeah.
sort of continues from you. So, like you mentioned, those regions just now within India, that's exactly what's happening, and hope it sort of strengthens now for whatever reason. Maybe cricket doesn't get a stranglehold over there as well, and also other sports. I mean, not just football, but also like I mean, there's certain parts that play volleyball more than any other part of the country. It's very difficult for us to understand. Bangalore has that extreme frisbee culture. You have a few hundred people who meet and just throw frisbee around. For me, it's difficult to grasp what exactly the whole lore is, but it is what it is, right? I mean,
Yeah.
to the outsider, you'll never be able to grasp what exactly these people going mad about and how where do they find the time to do this with. So, and something like I can't associate with the cricket culture because uh, it's something beyond my let's say there's no emotional connect as such. So it's very difficult to understand or explain. So yeah, it all
Yeah.
comes down to that. I mean, it's a very very personal thing. This whole sport culture.
It's insane. Like recently, we had the Olympics that ended, and we won 7 medals, and everybody went. I mean, great achievement, sure. Why not? Especially Neeraj to get the gold medal to perform on the day. He was not favorite. Like the favorite guy, absolutely tanked that day. Whatever reason, injury or not feeling it. So that was all great. But subsequently, if you see the entire Olympic contingent who did well went and played in Diamond League the last 2 3 days, and in India we are still felicitating them. and Neeraj he fell sick twice because of all the felicitations and things. So it's just unbelievable what we have to, uh, like, we can't rest on our laurels. No, there is a thing also. They say, "Oh, we've done this, so next time will be better." There is no guarantee to that. There is no support and cultural support to that also. I feel, I don't know.
No,
It's
one
just,
is what you mentioned, at least it sets a baseline. Now, if you
hmm.
want to really outdo PV Sindhu in the future, you have to win a gold because
Yeah,
equaling her has already been done. So at
yeah.
least we have a baseline now. Our baseline now is 7 medals at the Olympics. And
Hmm.
hopefully somebody takes the lead rather than again building a national javelin throw institute or something like that. You get a lot of these guys who are responsible for the results that Neeraj has secured.
Hmm. Hmm.
Maybe
Hmm.
the knowledge from the nutritionists, the knowledge from the coaching staff, the knowledge from people who put this whole thing together. JSW's institute in Bellary had a huge role to play in it.
Hmm.
So we
Hmm.
need to understand what exactly it is that got them to identify Neeraj. I mean, obviously, Neeraj at some point in time he started standing out from the crowd, as in he wasn't born with a javelin in his hand.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
what exactly brought him to the sport? At what age? Then again, the genetic disposition, just the whole fast twitch muscles, whatever it is. I mean, you need to be a really explosive athlete
Hmm.
to chuck a object that far. So
Yeah.
all those factors. I mean, I hope those things sustain and those things are highlighted rather than what's happening with him and sort of questions that he gets asked on newsfeed interviews
Oh,
about
yeah.
what food does he enjoy, does he have a girlfriend, and do you like chart and all those things. I mean, interview the people behind the scenes. I mean, interview his coaches, interview the people who
Hmm.
funded him, supported him, and also, I mean, try and understand. Like Mirabai Chanu, there's a really nice bit in the Hindu the other day where
Hmm.
they spoke about how in the I think late 80s, I'd shared that bit on Twitter, just that talking about how the coach had set up a weightlifting sort of platform in his house, and
Hmm.
these girls would come there and practice at the coach's
Hmm.
house. I mean, it was a makeshift facility and things. And this was the first generation of powerlifters in Manipur, all women. But she
Hmm.
had a bunch of idols to pick up on, and that's what gave you Mirabai Chanu's results, right? It's not that
Hmm.
she fell out of the sky and these people supported her and things like that. I mean, it's been, let's say, 20, 30 years of trial and error, and then you get the result. But
Hmm.
I'm saying we can reduce the trial and error by understanding and documenting it and sort of removing all the noise and excess baggage from it, as in streamlining your cultural pathway, as in how do we bring in more girls into this sport. There is a social taboo towards weights and powerlifting and women and them becoming too big, bulky, whatever it is. I mean, you might see a lot more girls get into badminton thanks to PV Sindhu and Sainia Nehwal and what happened with the whole tennis drive and stuff. But
Hmm.
what happened in Mirabai Chanu is a very microculture phenomenon, as in we need to understand what brought her to the sport. And then when you dig down a bit deeper, you realize that there always has been a strong culture of this amongst the women in Manipur, which is what gives you all this. They don't, this whole bit of fighting and all of that. I mean, there's a contingent that's come out of the Northeast that's fascinating because if you look at the facilities where they grew up in right until they left for the Olympics, there's nothing to write home over. And that's not the most important. I think that's other aspect of culture that we
Hmm.
understand. It's not really having these world-class facilities and foreign coaches and stuff. The kids need to grow up in a certain mindset and framework of expectations and standards and stuff that give you these winners. And if that goes missing, then no amount of funding and stuff can replicate, let's say, this 7 medal drive that we've had recently. Because
Hmm.
Abhinav Bindra is a self-funded athlete, from whatever I understand. I could be completely
He
wrong
is,
and
he is largely.
bits like that, but I think he had a range. So Sania Mirza's whatever fame that she accomplished, it cannot be replicated as a result of culture. So
Hmm.
I mean, even PV Sindhu's, but how do you ensure that two sporting parents come together and give an offspring like PV Sindhu, who has the height, the athletic
Hmm.
disposition, all of these factors, right? It's a lot of things that come together to give you a champion because these are like one in a million
Yeah, yeah.
athletes, depending on which sort of country population you come from. So, but again, like if you keep these cultural links in place, the right person, the right athlete, the right process, the right coaches come together to give you constant and repeatable success rather than
Hmm.
us only noticing them at the podium. As in, half of these guys we wouldn't know have they not made it to the podium. I mean, I think that aspect, if we can inculcate it, right, like right from the school level, sports days is very important. When I was in the school, got St. Patrick's in Chennai for a really short time, but sports day was intense, man, over there. I mean, it's like those Jojita Oi Sikandar scenes in what we saw on TV. It was that dramatic. And you had all the other Jesuit schools come in, and solid competition. I mean, they would train year round. Our athletes over there, and they were, I mean, just in terms of the work ethic and all that went behind inter-school competition, that was really intense. So it could be going on. I mean, you speak to a lot of Delhi cricketers, they'll tell you how intense inter-school cricket was in Delhi when they were growing up. That's sort of dying off now. Everything's
Mm.
become academy and net practice and all of that, and same scenes in Bombay as well. So,
Yeah.
I mean, football also, you speak to guys who played in the 80s and mid 90s, they constantly tell you about amount of games that they played and limitations set
Yeah.
by the AFL by giving them coupons and whatnot.
Mm.
Because there was something to compete for. There were a lot more trophies and things, and we need to revive all of that. I mean, without competition, all of these processes that I spoke about, nutrition, blah blah blah. I mean, if I ask you or any of or most of the sports journalists, again, it's too much to cover. But we have no idea who our best high jumper is, who our best long jumper is, who's our I mean, that contingent, as in what got them there. Do we have and understand? But you look at the US sporting teams, and they send hundreds of athletes, and all of them are the pathway is well documented. The
Mm.
school system really works for them, and none of it is government, central government funding, from what I understand. They need to
No, no.
generate generate their own sponsors and
Yeah.
bring the funding in. They just
For
drop
Olympic
funding.
sport, yes, definitely.
Yeah. So there is no the thing that it's mostly privately funded and fundraising and all these drives that come in. So
Mm.
because that's real culture kick in, as in, and that gets
Yeah.
you goals, as in.
Yeah. There is also that American system. One thing I like is, let's say I come in a sports scholarship to a college. I have to maintain my performance for that scholarship to
Yeah,
be valid, and I have to maintain a certain marks or grades to keep that thing valid also. So in here, I can get in as sports. I have a friend who got in through football scholarship. After 1 year, he never played. For
yeah,
whatever
that's
reason. So he continued to. I mean, I'm happy he got the education, but
yeah.
that sports one spot is gone for someone who wasted it. Or it could be the other way around also. It is like the person that studies
No, but
more and does not play
no,
or
but the
plays more.
valuation in terms of I think the whole competition factor also is sort of drained away, right? I mean, inter-college
Hmm.
rivalries aren't what it used to be. Inter-university games aren't as intense as they used to be. So if there's not enough weightage to secure the national championship for university or college to prove that you're the best college team. In US, you look at how intense that whole competition is,
Yeah, yeah.
as in that NCAA
Yellow
divisions and
ball,
whatnot.
orange
I
ball, and
mean,
all is massive.
yeah, I mean, like it's crazy. The funding
Yeah.
that they get, the $1 billion franchises, the college sports team, sports teams.
Hmm.
But US is a totally different ball game. But in India, again, like you announce sports quota, but what are you competing at? Inter college games are about 3-4 games. If you qualify, then it's additional two or something like that. And there really is no attractive pathway for us as spectators to follow. Like it would be great if Bangalore University versus Madras University, we had something like that to
Hmm. Maybe
build
Halo
towards and
India
look
can
forward
do
to.
that. Who knows? Just hoping.
Which one?
Halo India, they started some 4 5 years ago. Right?
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. 20 years from
Hopefully.
now, if that's because I
Yeah.
think that's the whole idea behind it any which way.
Yeah.
That is, you make it as intense and attractive as what the US sporting culture is. So, but yeah,
Hmm.
it'll take time though. It won't happen
It'll take
within
time.
one, two
Yeah,
years.
yeah. That's what somebody is asking me, and I was like, no, I mean, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I was like, I don't know
It'll take
because
time.
it's too like it's only been 5 years. Give 15 years later or 20 years later, we'll see if it is a good thing or a bad thing. I just wanted to pick your brain about one more thing. So I was thinking of writing something on women's sport, but largely loosely based on Indian women's team, like cricket team or maybe probably football team because that's more my comfort zone. So while going through my that studies that I was doing, he was talking about the challenges for a women's team. Because generally, women's individuals are more successful than team sports or more popular. Like a tennis or a badminton is more popular than football or any other such sport, even worldwide. So one is obviously the fact that they have personalities and history. Like tennis had a women's team since the 70s. I mean, women's WTA since the 70s, or a version of WTA since that time, and had great individual characters who stood up for things, Navratilova and Billie Jean King from that time onwards. So, to build that culture of strong women playing, that's fair enough. And in there are other sports like figure skating and gymnastics where women are probably more famous than the men who do this. At the same time, if you look at the women's sports team, even the US football national team, not so many people hear of it or are following it as such because despite their insane success, they have they've started late. Women obviously started late because of all the historical and cultural significant issues that they were going through. From whatever till the second wave of feminism in the 60s. So they had a late start. And the team sports have lagged behind because maybe traditional narratives, it takes time to set in. There is no Celtic versus Rangers in women's game or East Bengal versus Mohan Bagan in women's game. So when you look at the Indian team or situation in India now for the women's teams, cricket, football, whatever it may be, uh, how long do you think it will take, and what do we do? Like, do we have to create narratives for them? Because uh, ISL tried to do that for ISL teams with the Maha Derby and the Steel Derby, did not really work as such. So you can't create derbies also. So what do you do?
You're asking in terms of writers like you covering it and obviously having a overt passion towards women's sports and things, and what narratives can you build? I mean, the word narrative itself is hyping the truth, right? I mean, you try to add layers of it to make it interesting for people to buy in and maybe get their eyeballs, or at least a whiff of attention where they might think twice, okay, oh, this is happening, maybe I should make some time for it. But I think repetition of competition, repetition of platforms, repetition of I mean, just these athletes getting some sort of exposure. So if the women's season is played across more tournaments or maybe a longer league in places that are I mean, open to inviting them. So it'll be great if a place like Manipur hosts women's national championship with these clubs, as in rather than having just the IWL. I mean, I'm nobody to suggest what the structure should be, but the number of games they play, if it can be scattered, I mean, not one entity like the AFF taking charge of just at one league, but if somebody comes forward, like let's say another state league comes forward, says that I want to invite all the teams here, I want to do a President's Cup, I want to do a Army Martyrs Cup or whatever it is. I mean, you just create events and things to sort of give these our female athletes a platform and a calendar that, okay, you're engaged, we're going to give you 30 games in the calendar and bits, and take them to regions where you get these crowds and people will come in and obviously as a result, again, the results won't be obvious because again, your domestic results linked to national team, that takes time to sort of intertwine and bit, right? So when we come to a point where uh, the best women's team in the country is also giving you the maximum players for the national team, that will be a big step. And then people will come in because those who follow the clubs, they see the players playing for the national team, then more eyeballs
Yeah.
will go in towards that. So the narrative bit, I mean, you need to have a foundation to build a narrative on. Foundations come from representation. Narratives are built on foundations of performance, on foundations of standing out in bits, right? So once you see a person standing out, then you go and ask them what exactly was it about, and maybe you get the underdog stories. You get these interesting teams. I mean, bunch of female athletes. 40 years back decided that the boys are, I mean, we're going to start this team on our own. I heard about this. I think one of the teams in Northeast, in the
Yeah, yeah.
Northeast, I think Manipur, they decided that this is going to be our domain, this is our ground, and this is where we'll train. And but so then it's great to see. I mean, like teams like Gokulam and stuff taking women's football as seriously as they are. The announcements for the signings and stuff are as intense as they would announce a first team signing. So, but that's not enough. I mean, again,
Yeah,
more
yeah.
platforms to come in and bit. And if you're asking in terms of social acceptance for girls to come into sports, the whole aspect that you mentioned about them going into more individual sports because of these whole icons being placed ahead of them, there being a strong legacy and maybe sporting value in terms of what's happening with the women's team in the US, as in they get nowhere near the traction that they are supposed to get. There might be one of the most successful sports teams in history in terms of number of times they've entered a competition, number of titles they've won. made to the finals and titles and all of that. So, but again, I mean, one is I think it will find its place eventually because again, if you look at the history of women's sports, how recently has become as active. I think the women's cricket team played their first Test match this year, right, or something like that.
After a long time, after like a decade or something. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so that needs to build in. I mean, I think there was some decent buy-in into the Indian women's T20 bit because I keep following these comedians, right? On
Hmm.
they have these shows, talk shows, and Saurabh Pant and all these guys, where they
Hmm.
bring in a lot of sports writers and stuff, and they discuss. So it's good to hear about it. And then even Sharda Ugra on Amit Verma's podcast, Joy Bhattacharya on Amit Verma's
Hmm. Hmm.
podcast and stuff. When you listen to them, then you get a clear idea of where exactly the problems are. As
Hmm.
in, I'm just talking from a very layman's point of view. From you give them a platform, they'll come in, but the amount of layers, sort of obstacles that the female athletes need to overcome just to start playing the game. I mean, let's forget about getting world titles and stuff like that. But just the entry point into the game, having access to it is so difficult. Obstacles starting right from home, parents being an obstacle, teachers
Hmm.
being an obstacle, friends being an obstacle, social taboo kicking in and stuff. I think that whole Dangal movie, it gave you a good idea of
Yeah, yeah.
uh, even might be exaggerated, might not be exaggerated, but just the fact that they had to compete with boys to become as good as they were. And now people will say that's why they became as good
Hmm.
as they did because they were mixing and matching it with the boys from a very young age. But uh, well, I mean, that was pure improvisation then, right? I mean, this guy
Hmm.
figured out that wanted them to rise forward, and we'll get a lot of those stories. I mean, I think a lot of our women football players they speak about growing up playing with
Yeah.
boys, as in the school team they would play with the boys and things, and because they really
Bala Devi
weren't
keeps talking about it.
exclusive women's.
Ratan Bala,
Who?
Grace Dangme, Bala Devi, all of them.
I think
They,
all of them. I
yeah, all
think
of them.
Tanima
Yes.
Chibar.
Yeah.
There's so it takes a lot of guts. I mean, not guts because obviously the parents allow you to go out there and play. It might just be that they grew up in an area that is okay with girls just stepping in and playing and things. But you can imagine how it might not be okay in many parts of the country also.
Hmm.
When even a game like badminton might be a huge obstacle. So
Yeah.
I have no answer man for that. But it's just
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
if you're
Seriously.
talking about the top level narrative where it needs to change is it needs more platforms as in you need outstanding performances and bits like that so that you guys have something to write on and
Yeah.
build on. It can't just be a 5 game season, 8 game season that you and then rest of the year nobody talks about them till there is some other event. So
Yeah.
I think the whole sports calendar needs to be sort of a lot more active for them to really have these organic stories come through.
So I have one story about this, and then I have just one last question after that. The story is my first ever crush, right? When I was a kid, was with this girl who used to play cricket with us. Just because she used to come play cricket, she used to bowl really fast. And I was like,
Hmm.
yeah, she's amazing. Like that was the first crush. Like you know, a small kid, right? She's the only one who used to come and she used to just destroy all of us. So yeah,
Okay.
that's my story. And I remember that
Nice.
the sad thing is I was recently telling someone about this because they brought it up, and I was like, I don't remember how she looked, how she. If I see her on the road, I have no idea what she looks like. I don't even remember her name, to be completely honest.
She could bowl
I
fast.
I bowled fast and I remember her sound, the voice that
Okay.
she had, the when she speaks. That's the only thing I remember. Everything else is sort of
Nice.
like this vague memory. So, so the
So you
last.
remember what your wife is around, so you're being careful,
No, I told
not
her.
mentioning.
I told her. So it is innocent enough. No, long, what is it, like
Yeah,
10,
yeah.
20, 25 years ago, whatever, it doesn't matter. So the last question is I saw you tweet something saying jalebi.
Hmm.
Where did that come from?
Yeah,
We,
there's
we
this
know
book
jalebis,
that
huh? We know jalebis. We all know jalebis,
all
I'm
of
sure.
us do.
Yeah. So where did
Each
that
and
come
every
from?
Thursday.
Yeah.
There's a book called Language of Football.
Oh yes, yes. It's
Just
that guy from England, right?
yeah. Just
He's
reading
written
the author
Parallel
name.
and all from Kerala.
No. It's called Do You Speak Football by Tom
Yeah.
Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's something from Kerala. There's a nice one from Goa as well. But the jalebi thing, I figured is pan India, as in everybody understands it.
Yeah.
Where the Goan one was too specific to Goa, and the Kerala one was a bit too specific to Kerala.
Hmm.
But
I,
but
wa-
yeah, it was
but
nice to see that somebody's dedicated publication space for that.
Crazy. We have another one in Kerala called Hanuman Gear. So
What is that?
it's when the guy just runs with his head down and runs, and like he does lot of body feints and legs and things he's not really in control, he's not in balance, but somehow he gets to the other end.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so we had a friend who does that. We used to call him Hanuman Gear, and then run, and then he would just put his body head down and do. So
Let's
yeah,
go.
yeah. So yes, I mean, next time I'll maybe do it.
Sometimes they continue without the ball also. It gets plucked off their feet, they're still going.
Yeah, because I always wonder. So there are times when you get stuck in the corner, right? And then if you have to twist and turn, the moment I get out of it, I'm really tired because of the effort that you have to put in with your body movement and all those. I keep asking, like, how are you able to do this like some 15 times in a row?
Skilled athlete.
Insane athlete. And he was slightly chubby also. So I think he used his width very well to shield in between and things. But Hanuman Gear, that's what he used to tell him. Like, if we couldn't pass out of the back, like, just go, man, Hanuman Gear, go. So yeah, that's maybe something I should tell Tom Karen to add to the vocabulary there.
Cover. I'll check if it's there.
Probably not. It's like probably a very small thing. Like maybe we came up with it.
One second, I'll just tell you. So they have one for each country, right? So it's easy to.
Oh yeah.
Out.
Spiral is that dribbler, normal quick winger who dribbles.
I think it should.
Because it's a fish that we have. It's the small, fast fish.
With snakehead.
Yeah.
A paral mean is a small freshwater fish found in the backwaters of Kerala. That is. Then there is a Pettu Kida Kunnavan.
Petti edukkunnu.
Okay, like you said it, and lying down after labor.
Petti edukkunnu. Yes. We also say this when there are strikers who get no offsides, right? Who will just stand in front of the goal post. They will call them kappi.
No, that's what they're saying.
He also calls them
a goal hungry striker who finds it hard to leave the opposition penalty area.
Yeah, Petti edukkunnu and kappi also we say. So he's just standing over there and probably talking to the goalkeeper. So that often happens. The guys will be talking to each other and he'll be like running all over the place and he'll just touch the ball and go celebrate. So yeah, we have kappi players also. All part of culture, no? Like you said.
All part of culture.
Yeah.
Have to keep this alive.
100%, yes. Okay, anyway, thank you so much, Richard, for your time. And it's always great catching up with you.
Same here.
Before we go, I'll just stop recording.